The parking lot camera caught everything. A black man in a plain gray hoodie and worn jeans, carrying nothing but a navy duffel bag, walking toward Building C of the Seaside Terraces luxury condominiums in La Jolla, San Diego. It was 4:30 in the afternoon on March 15, 2023, and the California sun was still high and warm. What happened next would be streamed live to over 2,000 viewers. A woman's voice, sharp and accusatory, cut through the quiet residential air. "Excuse me. Excuse me. You need to stop right there." The phone camera shook as she rushed forward, her designer heels clicking against the pavement. "I'm calling security. You don't live here. I know everyone who lives here." The man stopped walking. He didn't turn around immediately. He simply stood there, duffel bag in hand, shoulders relaxed, breathing steady. When he finally turned, his face showed nothing. No anger, no fear, no explanation. Just calm, dark eyes meeting the camera lens pointed at his face. "I'm live right now," the woman announced, her voice getting louder. "Everyone can see you. Whatever you're planning, you better leave before the police get here." The live stream chat exploded with comments. Heart emojis, thumbs up, "Get him out," someone typed. "Protect our community," wrote another. But nobody knew who this man really was. And that day, in less than 2 hours, everyone who participated in what happened next would desperately wish they could take it all back. If you believe that justice must reach those who discriminate based on appearance and that hidden power makes the best plot twist, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Now let's see what really happened that day in La Jolla. Marcus Thompson looked exactly like someone who didn't belong in Seaside Terraces. His gray hoodie had a small stain near the pocket. His jeans were faded at the knees. His black sneakers had seen better days. The white rubber edges yellowed with age. The duffel bag he carried was military surplus, forest green with frayed straps, the kind you'd find at a thrift store for $15. He'd just driven 11 hours straight from his previous assignment in Sacramento, still wearing the same comfortable clothes he'd thrown on that morning. The moving truck with his furniture wouldn't arrive until tomorrow. All he wanted was to get into his new condo, Unit 312 in Building C, take a hot shower and maybe order some food. The Seaside Terraces was the kind of place where luxury wasn't just implied, it was aggressively displayed. Palm trees lined perfectly manicured walkways. A fountain in the central courtyard featured imported Italian marble. The lobby of each building had crystal chandeliers that cost more than most people's cars. Monthly HOA fees ran $3,000. The average condo sold for $2.8 million. As Marcus walked from the guest parking area toward Building C, he noticed a woman in her early 50s watching him from her ground floor balcony. She wore white linen pants and a turquoise silk blouse. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail. Diamond earrings caught the sunlight. She held her phone in both hands, and even from 30 feet away, Marcus could see her eyes narrowing with suspicion. He'd seen that look before, too many times to count. It was the look that said, "You don't belong here." The look that assessed his skin color first, his clothes second, and made a judgment before he'd said a single word. Marcus kept walking. He had his key fob in his pocket, his purchase documents in his car, his FBI credentials in his wallet. He had every right to be here. He owned Unit 312 outright, paid in full just 6 days ago. But he also knew that explaining himself to someone who'd already decided he was a threat rarely went well. The woman's voice rang out across the parking lot. "Excuse me, can I help you find something?" The tone wasn't helpful, it was challenging. Marcus stopped but didn't turn around yet. He could hear her heels clicking rapidly against concrete, getting closer. "I said, excuse me." Her voice was louder now, sharper. "This is private property. Do you have business here?" Marcus turned slowly. His face remained neutral, his voice calm and even. "I'm going to my unit." "Your unit?" The woman's perfectly shaped eyebrows shot up. Her lips curved into something between a smile and a sneer. "I'm Diane Hartley. I'm president of the HOA board. I know every resident in this community, and I've never seen you before." She held up her phone. The screen showed she was recording. "I'm going to need to see some identification and verification of residency." Marcus said nothing. He simply looked at her, then at the phone, then back at her face. "Did you hear me?" Diane took 2 steps closer. "I need to see ID. Now. Or I'm calling security and the police." She raised her voice deliberately. "Everyone needs to see this. We have someone refusing to identify themselves in our private community." A man walking his small white dog nearby stopped and pulled out his phone. Within seconds, He was also recording. A woman on a second-floor balcony leaned over the railing, her phone aimed downward at the scene. Marcus still said nothing. He adjusted the duffel bag on his shoulder and took a step toward Building C. "Oh, no, you don't." Diane moved to block his path. "You're not going anywhere until security gets here." Diane Hartley hadn't built her reputation as HOA president by being passive. For 7 years, she'd run seaside terraces with an iron fist wrapped in designer silk. She knew every rule, every regulation, every loophole. She knew which residents were 2 days late on their HOA fees and which ones had planted flowers that violated the approved color palette. More importantly, she knew what this community represented: old money, new money, tech executives, retired attorneys, a celebrated plastic surgeon, a venture capitalist. These were people who expected certain standards, who expected certain neighbors, who expected that when they paid nearly $3 million for a condo, they wouldn't have to deal with those kinds of people wandering through the property. She'd said it herself at last month's board meeting, careful to use the right words. "We need to maintain the character of our community. We need to be vigilant about security. We need to make sure everyone who enters these grounds has legitimate business here." Translation understood by everyone in that room. Keep the wrong people out. Now standing 3 feet from this man in his shabby clothes and cheap duffel bag, Diane felt absolutely certain she was doing the right thing. He looked like a gym employee, or a maintenance worker, or worse. The way he refused to answer her questions, the way he just stood there with that blank expression, it confirmed everything she suspected. "Let me make this very simple," Diane said, her voice taking on the tone she used with particularly slow service workers. "This is private property, gated community, residents only. If you're making a delivery, you need to check in at the front gate. If you're visiting someone, they need to come down and escort you. If you're looking for work, we have a website where you can submit applications for maintenance positions." She spoke slowly, enunciating each word carefully, as if explaining basic concepts to a child. "But you can't just walk through here carrying a bag like you own the place." She laughed, a sharp sound without humor. "Do you understand what I'm saying? Or do I need to say it slower?" The man with the white dog had moved closer, his phone still recording. "Is there a problem, Diane?" "Just taking care of some community security, Richard," Diane called back, not taking her eyes off Marcus. "Making sure our neighborhood stays safe." "Want me to call the police?" Richard offered. "Already did," Diane lied smoothly. She turned back to Marcus. "They're on their way, so you can either leave voluntarily right now, or you can explain to the San Diego Police Department why you're trespassing on private property with a suspicious bag." She took another step closer, invading his personal space deliberately. Her voice dropped lower, meant only for him. "I don't know what you were planning to steal or who you were planning to visit, but it's not happening today. Not in my community." Marcus's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. It was the first real reaction Diane had seen from him. She felt a small surge of satisfaction. She was getting to him. "Good. Last chance," she said. "Put down the bag, show me some ID, and maybe this doesn't have to get ugly." Marcus shifted the duffel bag to his other shoulder. He looked at Diane for a long moment, his dark eyes steady and unblinking. Then, without a word, he turned and started walking again toward Building C. "Are you serious right now?" Diane's voice rose to a near shout. "Richard, stop him!" Richard Pemberton had lived at Seaside Terraces for 4 years. He was 62, retired from a career in commercial real estate, and he generally trusted Diane's judgment on community matters. If she said there was a problem, there was probably a problem. Plus, he'd seen the news. Crime was everywhere these days, you couldn't be too careful. He handed his dog's leash to a passing jogger and moved to intercept Marcus's path. "Hey buddy, hold on a second. Just stop right there." The woman from the second-floor balcony, Melissa Chen, hurried down the exterior stairs, her phone still recording. "What's going on?" "Diane caught someone trying to sneak in," Richard explained, positioning himself in front of Marcus. "Won't show ID or explain what he's doing here." "Oh my God," Melissa breathed. She was 34, worked in tech marketing, and had been terrified of break-ins ever since someone's car got broken into 3 months ago, 2 blocks away. "Should I call 911? "Already done," Diane said crisply, moving to Marcus's other side. Now he was boxed in, Diane on his left, Richard in front, Melissa approaching from the right. All 3 had phones out, recording from different angles. A couple emerged from the lobby of Building B, drawn by the commotion. The man was tall, mid-40s, wearing golf attire. The woman beside him had her hair in a neat bun and carried a yoga mat. "Everything okay?" the man called out. "Just a security situation, Trevor," Diane called back. "We've got it handled." Trevor Rodriguez exchanged a glance with his wife, Amanda. They moved closer, curiosity overcoming caution. "Need any help?" "Actually, yes," Diane said. "Can you record this from that angle? I want full documentation." This guy refused to identify himself, refused to state his business, and tried to walk into Building C with a duffel bag. "Jesus," Trevor muttered, pulling out his phone. "In broad daylight?" "They're getting bold," Richard agreed. "That's why we have to stay vigilant." Amanda hung back, uncertain. "Are you sure he's not just a resident? I mean, maybe he's new?" "I know every resident," Diane snapped. "Every single one. I personally review and approve every purchase in this community. Nobody moves in here without my knowledge." She turned her attention back to Marcus. "Which means he's either trespassing or he's lying about something." Marcus stood completely still. 5 people now surrounded him in a loose semicircle. 5 phones pointed at him like accusatory fingers. The afternoon sun beat down on the parking lot. A sprinkler system nearby created a rhythmic shh sound. "Look at him," Diane said, her voice taking on a theatrical quality. She was playing to the cameras now, to the live stream viewers, to the future evidence. "Won't answer simple questions, won't show ID, suspicious bag, sneaking around a luxury residential community." She paused for effect. "What would you think?" "Definitely suspicious," Melissa agreed, zooming in on Marcus's duffel bag with her phone camera. "That bag could have anything in it." "Probably tools," Richard suggested, "for breaking into units. Or stolen property he's trying to fence," Trevor added. They were feeding off each other now, each suggestion more certain than the last, building a narrative from nothing but assumptions and fear. "Here's what's going to happen," Diane announced. "You're going to put that bag down. Slowly. Then you're going to put your hands where we can see them. And you're going to wait right here until the police arrive, understand?" Marcus's eyes moved from face to face. Diane with her righteous anger, Richard with his protective stance, Melissa with her nervous energy, Trevor and Amanda hanging back but still recording, still watching, still complicit in their silence. He said nothing. "I don't think he speaks English," Richard said suddenly. "That's why he's not responding." "Oh, for God's sake." Diane rolled her eyes. She raised her voice and spoke very slowly, as if to someone hard of hearing. "Do you understand English?" A few people in the live stream chat laughed. Someone typed, "She said it slower. LOL. Maybe he's deaf?" Melissa suggested. "Deaf people can still show ID," Diane countered. She took a step closer to Marcus, close enough that he could smell her expensive perfume, close enough that the invasion of personal space was deliberate and aggressive. "I'm giving you one more chance. One more. Put down the bag and show me identification, or when the police get here I'm pressing charges for trespassing and we'll let them search whatever's in that bag." Diane's live stream had grown to over 4,000 viewers. Comments scrolled past rapidly. "Stand your ground, Diane. Protect your community. He looks guilty of you. Why won't he just show ID if he has nothing to hide?" This is what good neighbors do. Diane felt vindicated, empowered. She was doing what any responsible community leader would do. She was protecting property values, protecting safety, protecting the sanctity of seaside terraces. "You know what?" Diane's voice hardened. "I'm done being patient." She reached out and grabbed Marcus's arm, her French manicured nails digging into the fabric of his hoodie. "You're not going anywhere." Marcus looked down at her hand on his arm. His face remained impassive, but something shifted in his eyes. A line had been crossed. "Diane, maybe we should just wait for the—" Amanda started to say. "No," Diane cut her off. "I'm not letting him walk away. Richard, help me." Richard hesitated for just a second, then moved forward. He grabbed Marcus's other arm. "Just stay put, buddy. Don't make this harder than it has to be." "Someone search the bag," Trevor suggested. He stayed behind his phone camera, filming but not participating directly. "Good idea," Diane agreed. She reached for the duffel bag's zipper. That's when Marcus moved. Not violently, not dramatically. He simply pulled his arms free from their grip with a smooth, practiced motion that suggested strength they hadn't anticipated. He took 2 steps back, putting distance between himself and the group. "Oh, now he fights back," Diane said triumphantly. "Everyone see that? He just became physically aggressive." "I saw it," Richard confirmed. Got it on video, Melissa added. Marcus's hands hung loosely at his sides. His breathing remained steady. He still hadn't said a word beyond those initial 4. I'm going to my unit. Screw this, Diane said. She pulled out her phone and dialed. Yes, hi. I need police at Seaside Terraces condominiums in La Jolla, 3251 Calle de la Luna. We have a trespasser who just became physically aggressive when confronted. Black male, approximately 40 years old, 6 feet tall, wearing a gray hoodie and jeans, carrying a green duffel bag. She paused. Yes, we're maintaining visual contact. Please hurry. She hung up and smiled at Marcus. They'll be here in 5 minutes. Hope whatever's in that bag was worth it. The semicircle around Marcus had grown. 8 people now. A few more residents had emerged from buildings drawn by the drama. Someone's golden retriever barked excitedly. The sprinklers continued their rhythmic shh. I've seen people like you before, Diane said, her voice low enough that the phone microphones barely caught it. But Marcus heard every word. You think you can just walk into places you don't belong. You think nobody will stop you. You think you can intimidate people into looking the other way. She shook her head. Not here. Not in my community. We have standards. Richard stepped forward with a coffee he'd been carrying from earlier. In his agitation and the shuffle to grab Marcus, the cup tipped. Hot coffee splashed across Marcus's shoulder and chest, soaking into his gray hoodie. Oh shit, Richard said. Sorry, that was... Actually, I'm not sorry, Diane interrupted. Consider it a preview of how welcome you are here. A few people laughed. Someone in the live stream commented, Karma in real time. The coffee was hot enough to sting. Marcus could feel it seeping through the fabric, burning his skin slightly. He looked down at the spreading brown stain, then back up at the faces around him. Still, he said nothing. Diane reached out again, this time not for his arm but for the duffel bag itself. She grabbed one strap and pulled hard. Marcus held on, but Diane yanked again, and this time Richard joined her, both of them pulling at the bag. Let go, Diane commanded. The zipper, already old and worn, gave way. The duffel bag's contents spilled onto the pavement. A toiletry bag, a phone charger, 2 books, a framed photograph, a prescription pill bottle, clean socks and underwear, a worn FBI Academy t-shirt with the Quantico logo. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. They all stared at the FBI t-shirt lying there on the concrete. That's fake, Diane said quickly. You can buy those online, probably part of his con. Yeah, Richard agreed, though his voice had less certainty. Probably. But doubt had entered the equation. Amanda took a small step backward. Melissa lowered her phone slightly. Marcus knelt down slowly and began gathering his belongings, placing them back into the damaged duffel bag. His movements were precise and unhurried. When he picked up the framed photograph, a picture of himself in full FBI dress uniform receiving a commendation, he paused for just a moment before tucking it away. He stood up, zipped the damaged bag as best he could, and looked at Diane. You done? He asked quietly. It was only the second time he'd spoken. His voice was deep, calm, and carried a weight that made several people uncomfortable. We're done when the police say we're done, Diane retorted, but her voice had lost some of its edge. Marcus Thompson had spent 18 years with the FBI. He'd interviewed terrorists, negotiated with hostage takers, and maintained composure in situations where most people would have cracked. Standing in a parking lot surrounded by hostile civilians armed with nothing but prejudice and smartphones didn't even register on his personal threat scale. He could have ended this immediately, could have pulled out his credentials and watched their faces collapse, could have explained that he was the new regional director for the San Diego field office, that he had authority over federal investigations across Southern California, that he'd personally approved 3 major corruption cases in the last month alone. But something Diane had said stuck with him. I've seen people like you before. People like him. She didn't mean FBI agents. She didn't mean federal law enforcement. She didn't mean decorated veterans or highly educated professionals. She meant black men. And that meant this wasn't really about trespassing or security or duffel bags. This was about something much older, much deeper, and much more pervasive. This was about a woman who saw his skin color before she saw anything else, who made assumptions before gathering facts, who weaponized her authority to put someone she deemed other in their place. Explaining himself wouldn't change that. Showing his credentials wouldn't change that. She would simply say she was justified in being cautious, that anyone would have done the same, that she couldn't have known. But she could have known. She could have asked politely instead of accusing. She could have waited to gather information before assembling a mob. She could have treated him like a human being instead of a threat. So Marcus made a choice. He said nothing. He didn't defend himself. He didn't explain. He didn't justify his presence or prove his identity. He simply adjusted his coffee-stained, now damaged hoodie, picked up his duffel bag with the broken zipper, and started walking toward Building C. "Hey!" Diane called after him. "Hey! I said stop." Marcus didn't stop. He didn't run. He walked at a steady, unhurried pace, his footsteps echoing off the concrete. "Somebody stop him." Diane's voice rose to a shriek. "Richard! Trevor! Stop him!" But nobody moved. Something about Marcus's calm, his complete lack of fear or urgency, had created an invisible barrier. Richard took one step forward, then stopped. Trevor lowered his phone. Even Melissa, who'd been so eager to help before, just stood there. Marcus reached Building C's entrance. The electronic lock recognized his key fob, the one he'd been given 6 days ago when he closed on Unit 312, and the glass door clicked open. He walked inside. The door closed behind him with a soft hiss. For 5 full seconds, absolute silence filled the parking lot. 8 people stood frozen, phones still raised, the live stream still broadcasting to thousands of viewers. The golden retriever had stopped barking. Even the sprinklers seemed quieter. Then someone whispered, "Did that door just let him in?" Nobody understood the significance of what they'd just witnessed. They'd humiliated a man who never fought back, never explained himself, never showed even a flicker of anger. A man who walked away with dignity so absolute, so unshakable, that it made their own actions look small and petty by comparison. But they didn't understand that yet. Not yet. Did you see the calm with which he walked away? Could you maintain that kind of dignity? Leave your answer in the comments. Diane's hand trembled slightly as she ended her live stream. 4,216 viewers had watched the confrontation. The comments had been overwhelmingly supportive, at first, but now, scrolling back through them, she noticed a shift in the last few minutes. Wait, the door let him in? How did he have a key fob? Guys, I think he might actually live there. That FBI shirt looked real. Diane, you might want to check this. Her stomach did a small, uncomfortable flip. That was weird, right? Melissa said, still holding her phone. The way he just left. No arguing, no explaining, nothing. Criminals don't argue, Diane said automatically, but her voice lacked conviction. Richard picked up his dog's leash from where the jogger had left it tied to a bench. His coffee cup lay on its side nearby. Empty now, a brown stain marking where it had spilled on Marcus. The door recognized his fob. He said slowly, That's a resident key fob. Could be stolen, Trevor suggested, but he didn't sound sure. Amanda had already pulled out her phone and was typing rapidly. What did you say his name was? I didn't, Diane said sharply. He never identified himself. Right, but hold on. Amanda's eyes widened as she looked at her screen. Oh no. What? Diane moved closer, trying to see Amanda's phone. I just Googled new FBI San Diego and… Amanda turned her phone around. The screen showed a press release from the FBI's Public Affairs Office dated 1 week ago. Below the headline was a photograph. A professional headshot. A man in a dark suit, American flag in the background, FBI seal visible. The same face they'd just spent 15 minutes humiliating in the parking lot. Marcus Thompson, 41, has been appointed Regional Director of the FBI's San Diego Field Office, effective March 10, 2023. Thompson brings 18 years of experience in federal law enforcement, including counterterrorism, organized crime, and public corruption investigations. The color drained from Diane's face. That's him, Melissa whispered. Oh my God, that's definitely him. No, Diane said. No, that can't be right. He was dressed like… He looked like someone who just drove 11 hours and wanted to get into his new home. Amanda finished quietly. Richard sat down heavily on a nearby bench. We just, on camera, to an FBI regional director. Trevor was already backing away, his phone disappearing into his pocket. I wasn't really involved, I was just watching, I barely said anything. You suggested searching his bag, his wife reminded him. As a question, I asked if someone should, I didn't actually… I have it all on video, Melissa said numbly. The whole thing. I recorded everything. Diane's mind raced. Okay. This was fixable. It was a misunderstanding. A reasonable person would see that. She was just protecting her community. How was she supposed to know? He should have identified himself. This was his fault, really, for not just explaining who he was. It's fine, she said aloud, trying to convince herself as much as the others. We didn't do anything wrong. We had legitimate security concerns. Any reasonable person would have. Her phone rang. The caller ID showed. Seaside Terraces, Legal Counsel. Her hand shook as she answered. Hello? Diane, it's Patricia. I just got a very interesting phone call from someone claiming to be an attorney representing a new resident in Building C. The lawyer's voice was crisp and professional. They're alleging harassment, assault, and civil rights violations. I need you to tell me exactly what happened today. Diane opened her mouth to explain, but no words came out. How did she explain? How did she describe surrounding a man, grabbing him, spilling coffee on him, dumping his personal belongings on the ground? All because why? Because he was black and carrying a duffel bag in his own community? Diane? Patricia's voice sharpened. Are you there? What happened? Diane looked around the parking lot. The other residents were dispersing rapidly, suddenly very interested in being somewhere else. There was a misunderstanding. What kind of misunderstanding involves multiple witnesses, live streaming, and physical contact? How do you even know about? The video has already been sent to our office, multiple angles. I've watched 3 separate recordings in the last 10 minutes. Patricia sighed heavily. Diane, please tell me you verified who this person was before you confronted them. Silence. Diane? I tried to, Diane said weakly. He wouldn't identify himself. Did you ask him politely? Diane thought back to her first words. Excuse me, you need to stop right there. The accusation in her voice. The assumption of criminality. Diane, did you greet him like a potential resident or like a suspect? More silence. That's what I thought. Patricia's voice turned businesslike. Don't talk to anyone else about this. Don't post anything on social media. Don't delete any videos or messages. I'll be in touch. The line went dead. Diane stood alone in the parking lot, her designer heels clicking nervously against the pavement as she shifted her weight. The California sun, which had seemed so bright and cheerful 20 minutes ago, now felt harsh and exposing. She looked up at Building C, at the windows of the 3rd floor. Somewhere up there, Marcus Thompson was probably taking that shower he'd wanted, probably changing out of his coffee-stained hoodie, probably telling someone, a lawyer, a colleague, maybe even the FBI's Civil Rights Division, exactly what had just happened. For the first time since she'd started yelling across the parking lot, Diane felt genuinely afraid. At 6:45 p.m., Diane received an email from the Seaside Terraces Management Company. Emergency HOA board meeting, mandatory attendance, tonight 8 p.m. By 7:15 p.m., 3 members of the HOA board had called her personally, their voices tight with stress. They'd all received the same video compilation, a 15-minute cut showing every angle of the incident, edited to highlight the most damning moments. Diane grabbing Marcus's arm, Richard spilling coffee on him, Diane saying, I've seen people like you before. Multiple people surrounding him, phones raised like weapons, his belongings scattered on the ground, and through it all, Marcus's face, calm, dignified, silent. By 7:30 p.m., the video had been posted to multiple social media platforms by anonymous accounts. Within an hour, it had 15,000 views. By 8 p.m., 50,000. The comments were brutal. This is racial profiling, plain and simple. That woman needs to be in jail. FBI should investigate her. Imagine doing this to a federal law enforcement director. I hope he sues them into bankruptcy. At 8 p.m. sharp, Diane sat in the community center meeting room with 5 other board members. Patricia, the lawyer, sat at the head of the table via video call, her expression grim. Let me be very clear about our situation, Patricia began. We are facing potential litigation from Mr. Thompson that could result in millions of dollars in damages. We are facing a PR nightmare that has already reached local news stations. We are facing possible federal civil rights investigations. And we are facing the very real possibility that our insurance will not cover any of this because it stems from what appears to be racially motivated harassment. Board member James Wu raised his hand tentatively. Can't we just apologize? Settle quietly? Mr. Thompson's attorney has made it clear that an apology is not sufficient. Patricia pulled up a document on screen. They're seeking formal acknowledgement of civil rights violations, mandatory anti-bias training for all HOA board members and management, a public statement, financial compensation for damages, and Diane's immediate removal as HOA president. What? Diane stood up so fast her chair tipped backward. They can't demand that. They're not demanding it. They're offering it as a settlement alternative to federal litigation. Patricia's eyes were hard. Diane, you racially profiled an FBI regional director in front of multiple witnesses while live streaming. You physically grabbed him. You had someone spill hot coffee on him. You dumped his personal belongings on the ground. Every single action is documented from multiple angles. I was protecting our community. From what? Patricia's voice cut like a knife. From a black man entering his own home? The silence in the room was deafening. I didn't know, Diane said quietly. You didn't ask, Patricia countered. That's the entire problem. You saw a black man, an assumed criminal. You didn't see expensive FBI training. You didn't see 18 years of federal service. You didn't see someone who just bought a $3 million condo. You saw skin color and made a choice. Tears formed in Diane's eyes. That's not fair. I'm not racist. I would have stopped anyone who looked suspicious. Would you? Board member Yuki Tanaka spoke up for the first time. Diane, be honest. If that had been a white man in a hoodie carrying a gym bag, would you have screamed at him across the parking lot? Would you have grabbed his arm? Would you have told Richard to stop him? Diane wanted to say yes. She wanted to believe she would have done the same thing. But somewhere, deep down, she knew the truth. The video is everywhere now, Patricia continued. Local news has picked it up. The FBI has been asked to comment. This isn't going away quietly. What do we do? James asked. We accept their settlement terms. All of them. Immediately. Patricia looked directly at Diane through the screen. Which means, Diane, you need to submit your resignation as HOA president, effective immediately. If you fight this, if you make this harder, the legal fees alone will bankrupt this HOA. At 9:30 p.m. that same night, Marcus Thompson sat in his nearly empty condo, furniture still on a truck somewhere between Sacramento and San Diego, and took a call from his direct supervisor at FBI headquarters in Washington. Marcus, I saw the video. Yes, sir. Hell of a welcome to San Diego. Yes, sir. A pause. How do you want to handle this? Marcus looked out his window at the perfectly manicured grounds of seaside terraces, at the fountain lit up with colored lights, at the luxury cars in the parking lot. He thought about Diane's face when she grabbed his arm, Richard's casual violence with the coffee, Melissa's eager recording, Trevor's cowardly suggestions from behind a camera. I want to do it right, Marcus said quietly. I want this documented. I want it investigated. I want every single person who participated to understand the consequences. Civil rights violation investigation? Yes, sir. Full scope. I'll recuse myself from direct involvement, but I want the San Diego office to handle it personally. You know it's going to be public. It's already public. 60,000 people have seen me get profiled on my own property. I think it's time 60,000 people saw what happens when you discriminate against someone who has the power to do something about it. Another pause. You have my full support. I'll have the Office of Professional Responsibility coordinate with San Diego Civil Rights Division. They'll treat this like any other case. Thank you, sir. Marcus ended the call and opened his laptop. His personal email already had 47 messages from people who'd recognized him in the videos. Former colleagues, current agents, attorneys, civil rights organizations, even 2 sitting federal judges. One email stood out. It was from his deputy director in San Diego, Special Agent Sarah Chen, who'd be running point on the investigation. Marcus, just watched the video. Already pulling camera footage from the property's security system. We have everything from multiple angles, including parking lot cameras you probably didn't even notice. The woman went live on social media, which means she inadvertently created a permanent federal record. I'm assembling a team. This is going to be textbook. Marcus smiled grimly. Textbook indeed. By 10 p.m., a formal investigation had been opened. By 10:30 p.m., FBI agents had contacted Seaside Terraces management requesting all security camera footage, HOA records, and resident contact information. By 11 p.m., a notice had been sent to Diane Hartley, Richard Pemberton, Melissa Chen, and Trevor Rodriguez informing them they were subjects of a federal civil rights investigation. The next morning, March 16, 2023, at exactly 9 a.m., two FBI agents knocked on Diane Hartley's door. She opened it wearing a silk robe, her eyes red from crying, her hand shaking as she held her phone. "Diane Hartley?" the female agent asked. "Yes? I'm Special Agent Chen, and this is Special Agent Rodriguez. We're here regarding an incident that occurred yesterday at approximately 4:30 p.m. in the Seaside Terraces parking lot. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Diane's knees buckled. She grabbed the doorframe for support. "Wait, what? You're arresting me?" "We're not arresting you at this time," Agent Chen clarified. "But we need you to come with us for questioning regarding a potential federal civil rights violation under Title 18, United States Code, Section 242. Specifically, conspiracy to deprive an individual of their civil rights through intimidation and assault." "I didn't assault anyone." Agent Rodriguez held up a tablet showing a freeze frame from Melissa's video. Diane's hand wrapped around Marcus's arm, her nails digging into his hoodie, her face twisted with anger. "This is assault under California Penal Code Section 240, he said calmly. "The federal charge comes from the civil rights component. You knowingly targeted Mr. Thompson based on his race." He wouldn't identify himself. He didn't have to." Agent Chen's voice was firm but not unkind. "He was on his own property, entering his own residence. He had no legal obligation to explain himself to you. You had no legal authority to detain him, question him, or touch him." Diane's world tilted sideways. Everything she'd thought was justified, everything she'd believed was reasonable, was being systematically dismantled by two federal agents standing in her doorway at 9 a.m. on a Thursday morning. "Get dressed, Ms. Hartley," Agent Chen said. "We'll wait." Similar scenes played out at Richard Pemberton's house, where his wife answered the door in shock. At Melissa Chen's apartment, where she started crying before the agents finished introducing themselves. At Trevor and Amanda Rodriguez's condo, where Trevor immediately said, "I want a lawyer," before the agents had even stated why they were there. By noon, all four had been questioned at the FBI's San Diego field office. By 2 p.m., local news stations were running the story. FBI investigates racial profiling incident at luxury La Jolla condos. The news footage showed Marcus's official FBI portrait alongside clips from the parking lot videos. The contrast was stark. Professional, decorated federal agent versus a man being treated like a criminal for walking to his own home. By 4 p.m., exactly 24 hours after the initial confrontation, the story had gone national. The consequences came swift and merciless. For Diane Hartley, within 48 hours of the incident, she'd resigned as HOA president under threat of immediate removal. Her resignation letter, mandated by the settlement agreement, included a public acknowledgement that her actions constituted racial profiling and civil rights violations. Within 1 week, the video had reached 3 million views across various platforms. Her full name was attached to every version. Her face became a meme. Someone created a Twitter account called La Jolla Karen, dedicated to documenting her downfall. Within 2 weeks, she'd been fired from her position as a part-time consultant for a real estate development firm. Her employer released a statement: "We do not tolerate discrimination in any form." Within 1 month, federal charges were filed. Title 18, United States Code, Section 242, Conspiracy Against Rights. The charge carried a maximum sentence of 10 years in federal prison. Her attorney advised her to plead guilty in exchange for reduced sentencing. On June 23, 2023, she stood before a federal judge and admitted that she had deprived Marcus Thompson of his constitutional rights through intimidation and assault, motivated by racial bias. The judge sentenced her to 18 months in federal prison, followed by 2 years of supervised release and 500 hours of community service with civil rights organizations. But the legal consequences weren't the worst part. The worst part was becoming a national symbol. The worst part was having her face represent everything wrong with racial profiling, HOA tyranny, and white privilege. The worst part was that when people Googled her name, they found endless articles, videos, and commentary about her actions that day. For Richard Pemberton, the coffee spill that had seemed so minor, became assault with a hot liquid during the commission of a civil rights violation. He lost his membership at his country club within a week. The board didn't need to explain why. His fellow members simply didn't want to be associated with him. His daughter, a junior at UC San Diego, called him crying. "Dad, everyone's seen the video? They know you're my father. People are saying things. I can't go to class without someone bringing it up." He pleaded guilty to a federal misdemeanor civil rights violation and received 6 months home detention, 18 months probation, and a $10,000 fine. But worse than the legal consequences was the social death. Friends stopped calling. Invitations dried up. His wife filed for divorce 3 months later, citing irreconcilable differences and public humiliation. For Melissa Chen, her tech marketing career ended abruptly when her employer saw the video. She'd been the one most eager to film, most excited to document, most enthusiastic about catching a criminal. "We're a diversity-focused company," her manager explained during the termination meeting. "We simply can't have someone in a client-facing role who has demonstrated this kind of bias." She'd been making $130,000 a year. Now she couldn't get an interview. The irony wasn't lost on her. She was Asian American, herself a minority, yet she'd participated in the profiling of a black man without hesitation. That nuance was lost in the national conversation. She became another face of the problem. She pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor civil rights violation and received probation and community service. She moved back to her parents' house in Arizona, unable to afford her La Jolla rent, unable to find new employment, unable to escape the video that played every time a potential employer Googled her name. For Trevor Rodriguez, he'd thought staying behind his camera would protect him. He'd thought not directly touching Marcus would mean he wasn't involved. He'd thought suggesting others search the bag was different from searching it himself. The FBI disagreed. Conspiracy to deprive civil rights doesn't require direct action. It requires participation in a scheme to violate someone's constitutional rights. Trevor's suggestions, his recording, his presence as part of the intimidating mob, all constituted participation. He lost his job as a financial advisor. His firm couldn't afford the association. Several clients specifically requested different advisors after seeing the video. He pleaded guilty and received probation, fines, and mandatory anti-bias training. His wife, Amanda, filed for divorce. In the papers, she cited his actions that day as evidence of moral character incompatible with marriage. For Seaside Terraces, HOA. The HOA paid a $600,000 settlement to Marcus Thompson, covering damages, legal fees, and punitive compensation. They implemented mandatory anti-discrimination training for all residents. They hired a new management company with explicit civil rights protections in place. Property values dipped when the story went national. Nobody wanted to live in that community where the FBI director got profiled. 3 board members resigned. The HOA's insurance premiums tripled. On a warm afternoon in September 2023, 6 months after the incident, Marcus Thompson sat on his balcony in Unit 312 of Building C. His furniture had long since arrived. The walls were painted. Pictures hung in frames. It finally felt like home. Below, in the parking lot, a new resident moved in. A young black couple with a baby carrier and boxes stacked on a dolly. Marcus watched as the current HOA president, a retired teacher named Margaret, who'd taken over after Diane's forced resignation, personally greeted them, helped carry boxes, and welcomed them warmly. Times had changed at Seaside Terraces. They'd had to. Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from Sarah Chen. "Diane Hartley just self-surrendered to FCI Dublin. 18 months, starting today. Thought you'd want to know." Marcus didn't feel triumphant. He felt tired. Tired of living in a world where he couldn't walk to his own front door without being presumed a criminal. Tired of having to prove his humanity before people would treat him with basic dignity. But he also felt something else. Hope. Because the video of that day had done something important. It had shown, in stark and undeniable terms, what racial profiling looked like. Not abstract policy discussions or theoretical debates, but real people making real choices based on skin color alone. 3 million people had watched Diane assume he was a criminal based purely on his appearance. 3 million people had watched him maintain dignity in the face of humiliation. 3 million people had watched the consequences unfold when bias met accountability. The story had been shared in police academies as a training example. Civil rights organizations used it in workshops. Law schools discussed it in constitutional law classes. And somewhere, perhaps, someone who might have made the same choice Diane made. Someone who might have seen a black man in a hoodie and assumed threat instead of neighbor. Watched that video and thought twice. That was worth something. Marcus's doorbell rang. He opened it to find an elderly white woman from the second floor holding a covered dish. "Mr. Thompson? I'm Barbara from 208. I just wanted to welcome you properly to the building. I made lasagna and I thought—" She trailed off, looking nervous. "I'm sorry. I should have done this 6 months ago. I should have. That day I saw what happened from my window and I didn't do anything. I didn't speak up, I just watched." Marcus took the dish. "Thank you, Barbara, for the lasagna and for the honesty. What happened to you was wrong," she said firmly. "I want you to know that not everyone here thought that way. Some of us were just cowards, too afraid to stand up to Diane." She met his eyes. "I'm trying to do better. That's all any of us can do," Marcus said gently. After she left, he set the lasagna in his kitchen and returned to his balcony. The California sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The fountain in the courtyard sparkled in the fading light. Somewhere in Northern California, Diane Hartley was probably sitting in a federal prison cell, eating dinner on a plastic tray, wondering how 15 minutes in a parking lot had destroyed her entire life. Somewhere in suburban San Diego, Richard Pemberton was probably sitting in his now empty house, ankle monitor around his leg, scrolling through divorce papers. Somewhere in Arizona, Melissa Chen was probably scrolling through job listings, knowing she'd never get a call back. Somewhere in La Jolla, Trevor Rodriguez was probably telling himself it wasn't really his fault, that he'd barely been involved, that the punishment didn't fit the crime. But Marcus knew the truth. The punishment fit perfectly. You cannot surround someone, intimidate them, assault them, and humiliate them based on the color of their skin without consequences. Not anymore. Not when cameras are everywhere. Not when the person you target might have the power to ensure justice is actually served. The lesson was simple but profound. When you judge someone based solely on appearance, when you weaponize your privilege to put someone in their place, when you participate in humiliation without knowing who you're humiliating, you are taking a risk you cannot afford. Because power doesn't always look the way you expect it to look. Authority doesn't always dress the way you think it should dress. And the person you're treating like a criminal might be the one person with the authority, the resources, and the determination to ensure you face every consequence you deserve. Marcus raised his glass of wine toward the setting sun. "To justice," he said quietly, "however long it takes to arrive. This case reminds us that no one should be judged by their appearance. Justice, when it arrives, is complete and irreversible." Were you able to spot the signs that something was wrong throughout the narrative? Share your theories in the comments. If you enjoyed this story of poetic justice, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Leave your like if this story inspired you and share it with someone who believes that hidden power makes the best plot twist.